Yeah, baby. October 8th, 2020. Back at it again. Your new home for real football talk in the mornings, along with John Murphy, David Turner. I'm Rick Serritella. We've got a lot of scouting experience on the panel. We've got a lot of expertise. We're going to discuss the hot topics and debate like we always do about this time. So we're rocking and rolling. We're moving and grooving, and it's another breaking news right before we come on the air. Another Titans positive, inconclusive test from yesterday. This weekend's game now in real jeopardy, and it sounds like a lot of owners around the league are kind of pissed off with Tennessee for conducting off-campus practices during the quarantine when they were supposed to be home. Ryan Tannehill, one of those players at these workouts outside the facility, and we're hearing now they can face some pretty severe consequences, John.
Yeah, I mean, I think, first off, it shows you, no good deed, goes unpunished. So the local, school that they had access to, that they thought this was a great idea. Well, a couple of things. One, if it's the paratroopers dropping in like it's Red Dawn in your backyard at your school, or it's a bunch of NFL football players randomly showing up on your field 10 feet from the classroom windows, there's probably going to be somebody who's going to see that. So much like the invasion on Red Dawn didn't turn out too well for that city, neither did the Titans working out at the high school field where there's pictures of it everywhere. Now, can you really make out who's there and if it's Tannehill or not? Not really. But I'm also wondering how comfortable that principal feels today, with having his name associated with it and out in the media. Because when the Titans, who are currently undefeated, but at the league office, they may be in peril in terms of that status or get fined $1 million or lose their draft pick. Something tells me that guy may not be getting his front row seats that he might have been promised for lending them the field. So, I understood, but you read the quote from Tannehill saying, hey, you can't have us on standby and then tell us to play a game 2 days later. Clearly, once again, the difference between how people are thinking about this, what's important to them, in terms of individually versus the collective, which is you were told to wait 48 hours. You were told to just go to your separate places and, we'll be in contact and in touch with you. But it also just shows you, imagine that we're saying this is the same type of scenario that we're telling kids at Notre Dame, at NC State when it happened, and other places, on college campuses. Hey, these guys are tested. The rest of you have to go back home. Just go to your dorm or just go to your house or just go to your thing. Well, this isn't $1 million or, hundreds of $1,000 athletes that we ask them to do that. These are college kids. The pros can't even do it the right way. Right? So they decided we're not going to sit there, be undefeated, and go play a football game last week and get killed because we played Pittsburgh with 1 day of practice or no days working on the field. So, of course, they would all show up if somebody says, hey, let's go hit over on the field and run our sheet. You're going to show up. If you ask me to do it, I'm going to go do it. Was it the right thing to do? Absolutely not. And now you're seeing at peril that multiple mistakes that were very, very easy ones not to do. But I'll say this. I can't, under any circumstance, really bang the Titans worse than just saying, hey, you had to be smarter than that. Because anybody that's ever been associated with a team knows that they can tell you what the rules are. But if you're still playing a game come Saturday, Sunday, Friday, yeah, I'm pretty much doing what I got to do in order to try to win that game. And I think that's where the problem started, was you left without your defensive play caller And that was not breaking news prior to the game against the Vikings, right? So we don't know, when you trace it back quickly, did the Titans and their staff and anybody that was in the press box know that the Titans were without their defensive play caller because he may or may not have tested positive? That's a mistake by the NFL and the Titans, that something may have needed to be stopped. The next one is, you woke up knowing you didn't have your defensive play caller. Is there a chance you brought multiples of those new staff members who then have tested positive to the game, sat them next to each other, even with the little guards and everything they had, set up there in the press box for the coaches, and then flew them home on a team flight? Probably a strike two, but it's all the things that you can see. You're undefeated. You're a team that thinks you're a Super Bowl contender. You may have made a mistake with a coach. You may have made a mistake how you traveled. You might have made a mistake with how you processed a guy on the practice roster on Thursday who then tested positive on Saturday. Hey, if you had just come to us, the professor would have told you, or hell, Marianne or the skipper could have told you not to have done something like that. And now you have the guys hosting their own workout. Hopefully they beat the Steelers in the pretend practice, because I got a feeling they're going to take an L here somewhere, because they're either going to have guys suspended, they're either going to forfeit a draft pick, or they're going to forfeit a game. I mean, because the NFL, you can't, we've talked about it. You were able to make up games if you're the Marlins. You were able to make up games if you're the Cardinals. Last time I look, you're not playing a day-night doubleheader against the Bills and the Steelers at some point later on in the season.
Well, the Titans organization is going to feel the brunt of it as a whole, but I'm looking at Coach Vrabel. I'm looking at you, because it all began with Isaiah Wilson, and there was no discipline there, right? And so not once, but twice he was placed on the COVID list. That was his discipline. Just like anybody else who tests positive for COVID, it's like, all right, well, my teammates are looking at that and saying, well, hey, you can get away with it. Well, hey, we'll go hold our own private workout. And, at the end of the day, they can fine the Titans. To me, I think the forfeit of a game is probably the most logical thing. I think the next move is going to be to strip a first-round pick. But you've got to look at the leadership, and it's not the owner there that's controlling that locker room. It's the head coach. And I think Vrabel is the one responsible here, because, let's be honest, it's great to be a player's coach, but when the inmates run the asylum, you find yourself in deep doo-doo. David Turner, what will the Titans' penalty be for not abiding by the rules?
Well, let's not let J-Rob, the GM, off the hook here, because J-Rob is a very strong personality too. I mean, him and Vrabel are both strong personalities, and you would think that once the organization makes a decision not to fine the rookie, the GM has to be on board with that. It can't just come from the coach. It's got to be an organizational thing, and how's the organization setting the tone? So, I mean, J-Rob and Vrabel both are over there where I think they might be in the principal's office answering some questions. They might be over there with the owner saying, hey, we thought we could, count on these guys and this and that. But let's just be honest, guys. We're all competitors. We're not going to sit at home while our competition is practicing and know we're going to have to get on that field and defend our undefeated record, and we're not going to do anything about it. I mean, I was a competitive powerlifter. You're not going to tell me to go sit on my butt when my competition is going to be training, and I got a competition against them in a couple of days. I'm going to be training my ass off. I mean, you put me in a competitive environment, and I'm going to go compete. You engage the competitor, and now the competitor's engaged, and I'm going for it. So, this is my whole point, why I take the heat on here for being the doctor and everything. Why are we playing sports in the middle of a pandemic? Because as soon as you engage the competitors, as soon as you put them in this environment, it's no holds barred. It's let's go win the game. Let's get it. Let's do what we have to do. Hey, you know what? Let's go to this high school. Hey, let's go to the gym down the street. We can't go to the facility, but let's go to the gym down the street and go get a lift in. Hey, you know what? Let's go over to Tom's house, watch some film, and get the offensive line together and go through some stuff at his house when the coaches aren't around. I mean, the competitor is engaged. You're in the middle of a season. It's time to win the game. It's time to get to the Super Bowl. You're in automatic mode. And we're all getting tested every day. It doesn't really matter. Let's just get it. Let's just make it happen. As soon as that mentality comes into play, you can't stop the train. And here's where we go. And like John just said, you have these competitive individuals. You have Vrabel, who's a player's coach. You have all these situations and scenarios happening in the NFL, and it doesn't sound like anybody reported to the NFL. The defense coordinator didn't get on the plane. Nobody told the NFL. It's like when a player gets knocked in the head and he feels a little dingy, he doesn't tell the trainer, and then 2 plays later he's on the field with a massive concussion, and we're just like, this could have been stopped 2 plays ago if you told us you felt a little dingy. We would have pulled you out. Well, I thought I was fine. I thought by just leaving the defensive coordinator at home we were fine. Well, that means you were thinking instead of reporting. And if you're not reporting, then we can't do the contract tracing. We can't keep everybody in this 32-team scenario playing football and healthy. So therefore, what are we doing? You got to trust the components. If you can't trust the GM and the head coach of an NFL football team to report stuff because of the competitive environment, what else are other teams hiding and keeping from their opponents into just win football games?
Well, we discussed on yesterday's show a wave of new protocol and revisions to the rules by the NFL, NFLPA. And because of, some of the shenanigans going on, we talked about the investigation. The NFL actually went to Foxborough to investigate the protocol. One of the new procedures now is every team facility must keep their surveillance camera, the copy of that video footage, for at least 30 days. So if there was something going on, the NFL has access to that footage because players are required to wear masks at all times. They are now required to stay 10 feet apart in the cafeteria. They are no longer allowed to gather in more than groups of 3 outside the facility. Teams must provide at least 5 buses on game day for travel. And so now it's almost like the NFL has to babysit all these procedures and who's following the rules and who's abiding. And like you guys said, I mean, it's one thing with the colleges, but we've got professionals, millionaires that want to collect paychecks that can't follow instructions.
Well, you got the president of Notre Dame that can't follow the mask instructions. He's sitting at the White House Rose Garden, and now he's got COVID. I mean, that's the president of a university trying to say that he's the most responsible person on the and he's in the Rose Garden without a face mask on. Now he's got COVID. Okay,
but my question would be, if you wanted film on the other 31 teams from the last 30 days, why didn't you just go ask the Patriots?
Right. I mean, they have it already. It's in their rolling.
I think they might already have that stuff rolling.
Yeah, and like we had Catherine.
They were doing a video montage of all the teams' logos. That's all it was for. They weren't anything else. I'm just saying.
Exactly. We had Catherine Rake on from the Eagles this week, and she was telling us about the policy of like dining has changed and everything at the Eagles facility, on Mass Sports Take. And it's just like, you can try to say stay 10 feet away, but the competitive people are going to find a way to win. And they're going to find a way around a rule in order to win. If you're not going to say I have 32, every single person from this league has to have their security cameras on at home, and I know who's walking in that door. I know where gym they're going to off-site. I know where you can't, you don't know where they're going. I talked to Gettleman at the beginning of this thing, and he said, David, when they leave here, we don't know where they're going. You can trust that they're going to do the right thing, but you just don't know. And that's what we're finding right now. People are getting fatigued. Look at what Derek Carr's quote was the other day when he got caught at this thing. My wife deserves a date night. She's been cooped up in this house. You like the paycheck? You like coming home to a mansion and having everything paid for? Create date night at home. but that's not good enough. These guys are used to not being told what to do. They're used to being able to do whatever they want. They can afford whatever they want. They can make it rain. They can pop bottles, and they're not being able to live that lifestyle now. And you think this is going to last 16 more weeks? I think it's 100 more days till the end of the season. I think this is the tip of the iceberg before we see it. And like we said, what's the penalty? You're questioning me. I mean, I don't know if they started at a first-round pick, but they're going to start at some round pick. I think their draft picks are going to start, and the more, again, it could be a 7th, and the more violations you have, it just works its way up to a higher and higher draft pick.
I think you got to come out of the gates, take a first-round pick away, and then you start eliminating the problem. You forfeit a game, I guess what? This will stop. How about if you forfeit a game and lose a first-round pick? Guess what? I bet every player will be inside their room scared to step outside, because if I'm the coach or the GM now, yeah. If you lose the draft pick, a first-round pick, and you forfeit a game, believe me, this is going to all be nipped in the butt.
But also, Rick, let's look at the negotiation that the NFLPA did. If a game is missed, the players don't get paid. So if they forfeit a game, they don't get paid. My problem with this rule, if I understand it correctly, is if the Titans don't play and they're supposed to play the Bills, neither team gets paid. Okay? So if I'm the Bills or I'm the Pittsburgh Steelers, if I'm understanding this right, and I've done everything right, but the Titans aren't, I don't get my paycheck because that game didn't get played. And so now what's going to happen to those guys that are doing everything right? Are they going to start going, well, shit, I'm just going to go out now. Screw it, because I'm not getting paid already.
You want to lose another paycheck? And that's
I lost one without anything happening. Like, I did everything I was supposed to do.
You do it yourself. You lose another paycheck.
I'm saying, I think it's a bad deal by the NFLPA, if I have it right, that the team that is 100% negative, doing everything, they miss their paychecks.
Well, I'm sure there'll be a grievance filed, right? And they'll take it to the courts and figure that out. But I think you've got to come down drastic and really make a statement here if you want to nip this in the butt, because we saw yesterday the NFL came out and just denied, flat out said, hey, we're not even thinking about a bubble. So that's not even an option on the table right now.
Right.
So to your point, you want to get through the next 5 months or whatever it is, 22 weeks with the playoffs included. I mean, that's a significant amount of time here to hope for the best. On a positive note, no new positives. The Raiders, we talked about them being heavily fined. They had another player placed on the COVID protocol earlier this week. No new positives there. No new positives in New England after Cam Newton and Stephon Gilmore tested positive this past week. We still don't know if they're going to play for the Patriots. And then, the Chiefs, who just played the Patriots, also with 0 positives as of this morning. Now, I'm sure there will be more to come on this story. We're here on the State of Football, breaking it down. Rick Serritella, John Murphy, David Turner. Oh, by the way, there is a game being played tonight, fellas. Tampa Bay Bucks traveling into Chicago. Both teams 3-1. The Nick Foles experiment in Chicago off to a not an arousing start last week. It's funny. It's just like when he puts the eagle green on, that Foles magic comes into play. Anywhere else he goes, he looks like really a bad quarterback. And so I know Tampa Bay has a couple guys questionable. Mike Evans and Scotty Miller, 2 targets there for Tom Brady. And I think I saw Miller is expected to play. Mike Evans, we still don't know. This one actually began with Tampa Bay being about a touchdown favorite, John. I think now it's down to about 4. How do you see it playing out?
Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing that, would have the Bears excited about this game, it's one that they're amazingly both 3-1 at this stage. And if you would have said you had to have changed quarterbacks already, and gone to Foles after, making the decision, to start the year with Trubisky, I think you would have felt like, we may not be in the greatest position, at that stage, but to already be still 3-1, I mean, literally you're talking about, regardless of how this game turns out, play 500 the rest of the year, if that's not too much to ask for, when you have a legitimate shot at worst at one of those wild card spots. Now, what we'll see that will be interesting with Brady is the offense, in terms of conceptually and how they're running it and what they're able to do, even with some of the injuries, at both running back, receiver, and tight end, where they legitimately have lost somebody at every one of those positions is, okay, so if they're minus some of those guys and they're playing with some backup receiver types today and more Ronald Jones still with no McCoy and unlikely for Fournette, but you may get more of that Cameron Brate, Gronkowski, two tight ends. You might get a little different look, if you're minus, Evans, you got Godwin coming back to 100%, large possibility Evans is struggling. But remember, the Bucs are 3-1. Evans week 1 had one catch for about 5 yards, 8 yards. He had another game where he scored twice and had 2 catches for literally 2 yards and 2 touchdowns. So Mike Evans has not just been dominating in these wins in terms of being their most targeted guy or their most effective player, mainly because they've had to usher him through the first month, with his different assortment of injuries. But I could see the Bucs playing a different style, of game tonight, in terms of more run, more of the 2 tight ends if they don't have, all of their receivers. And the way that Brady plays and what he does and what this offense is asking for, it's nice to have those weapons. Brady's used to playing with no weapons. He played with no weapons the last couple of years in New England. It's really the battle of those 2 defenses. Is this the Bucs, continuing to show progression, in their secondary, and with their Mike linebacker, starting to show the promise of being a higher end, defense. And if you're the Bears, here's again, we keep putting it on certain people each week, when it comes to these kind of matchups. You have Hicks, you have Khalil Mack, you have a veteran secondary. You're going against Tom Brady on the road. If you're the Chicago Bears, yes, I have Foles. I don't have Tariq Cohen. Allen Robinson is making plays. Jimmy Graham has made a few. Yeah, the defense has to show up here, right? The catalyst tomorrow, if the Bears win, is got to be their defense. I think it's a close game because of the injuries. Still think it's Bucs at home by less than a touchdown.
Yeah, and you talk about Mike Evans, who clearly is one of the best wide receivers in the league. You take a look at his first 6 seasons; it's really unbelievable in terms of a stat perspective. And now he missed 3 games last year. He's banged up this year. You wonder about the durability. A guy that big taking hits and to the lower body all the time. But I kind of agree with John here. I think Tampa Bay probably goes up early, takes control of the game, and kind of cruises to a victory. David Turner, do you see it differently?
No, I'm not a Foles guy, so I'm not going to sit here. I mean, you listen to Mav's podcast, and you hear me and Ryan talk about how I'm not a Foles guy. So, I thought making the switch was trivial because their offense isn't what's going to win in ball games anyways. They're riding the defense. They just have to become more run dominant on offense, get the play action pass rolling, and then it'll be better for them. But right now, I don't see the Bears as a real legitimate threat. I think they won some games early, but I think it's going to be a struggle here late for them to win. And tonight's going to be another struggle. I think Tampa Bay wins by at least a touchdown, and if not more. Because I really like what Todd Bowles is doing on defense. He's got a couple guys already with 3 sacks. He's got a pressure defense going. His concepts in the back end are working. They're getting some turnovers. For me, we're going to talk the whole year. We're going to talk about Tom Brady and the offense and what's going on in the offense. But when you watch Tampa Bay games, watch what that defense is doing. That defense is doing some really good things, and it's really helping them shorten fields for that offense and get them in good field position where they're not having to go on, 20-play drives. They're able to get it done in just a few plays, and Brady's making a couple long ball completions, and it's working. So I think Tampa Bay is really on the rise, going to probably win that division down there. But the defensive play is going to really help them. I like what Todd's doing on that defense down there.
Yeah, terrible head coach, great defensive coordinator. That is Todd Bowles, pride of Orange, New Jersey. Shout out there. We are the State of Football Part 49 edition here on October 8th, 2020. We're going around the horn here.
No.
Rick Serritella, David Turner, John Murphy. And we're live and we're interactive. We're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, Periscope, Twitter. Drop us a line, get us a question. Samantha's trying to figure out the phone line so we can start taking calls over here. But we love your feedback, comments, and questions, suggestions, concerns, anything you got here for the heavy hitters. Now that we've got David Turner on the panel, and we're talking Mitchell Trubisky, we had an interesting topic. We had an interesting topic come up yesterday that I'd love to pick your brain on, David, because if you look back at the past 20 years, Mitchell Trubisky and Mark Sanchez are pretty much the most successful college to pro quarterbacks in terms of just starting one season at the college level, going on to the NFL, essentially becoming a first-round pick. If you look over the history, those are the two most successful guys. The Dwayne Haskins benching yesterday brought this stat or kind of tidbit out. And I'm curious, as a talent evaluator, we talked about the Ohio State bias. We don't really put much stock or emphasis into that because every player is a case-by-case scenario. But when you look over the trends and the history of time, every 1 year starting quarterback continues to fail at the NFL level, how much stock or emphasis do you put into a Trey Lance who comes from an FCS program, starts one level or one season at the college level, and then declares for the draft? I mean, does that thought process creep into your mind at all when you have to, again, use a top 10? If you want a talent like that, you now have to invest a top 10 pick. Are you willing to do that despite knowing what history tells us?
If you're asking me, no, I don't. I mean, if you look at my draft criteria that I have written up for, when I get that general manager interview someday, it says my quarterbacks have to have 3 years of starting ability. If they haven't started for 3 years and they haven't had X amount of 300-yard games and they don't have this measurable and that measurable, they're not going to be playing for me. It's just it's that simple. You don't need, because it's like dating, right? You don't need to date 100 girls. You need to find the one girl that's special and then keep her forever, right? And the same thing is the situation here with the quarterback. You don't need to have a bunch of lame duck quarterbacks that you're changing every year. You need to find that one diamond and then surround that diamond with other diamonds, and you got a great ring, right? You got a lot of rings. So, you get a Tom Brady in the 6th round who now turns into the GOAT. You get if you get a Joe Montana, you get a Patrick Mahomes. You just need that one. And then look what the Chiefs done. They've locked him up for 10 years, and they're like, that's the one. We found the one, and here we go. A guy who started 1 year, you got to look backwards and look at why he hasn't started more. That was Bill Walsh's thing, right? You find any 1 year starter at any position, look backwards and realize why they didn't start. Now, you might find a Priest Holmes where you have Ricky Williams in front of him, and you go, well, that's why, because Ricky's in front of him. And you're like, well, okay, then this kid might be a guy that we need to really look at and move forward because there was someone special in front of him. But when we had Mario Henderson in Oakland, and we were just like, hey, this isn't really a guy we can depend on, but the years above didn't want to hear it because of the measurables. The guy in front of Mario for 2.5 years, starting over him, never got a cup of coffee even in the NFL, and Mario couldn't beat him out. So it doesn't just translate from the quarterback position. It translates to me in my philosophy to all positions. If you're a 1 year starter, I got to find out why you haven't been able to break the lineup before that 1 year. And if it's because you had a special player in front of you, guess what? Like the case of Ohio State with the 4 cornerbacks.
Well, I don't know how special Easton Stick is, but I mean, that's the reason why. So, Trey Lance was up in Minnesota running the wing T offense, didn't have a heck of a lot of offers. He gets recruited to North Dakota State, clicks with Easton Stick. Stick says, hey, the whole selling point was you come sit behind me for a year and then the reins are yours. Now Lance comes out and has a season for the ages, right? And we've seen how these quarterbacks just skyrocket, like strike while the iron's hot. Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, even Dwayne Haskins. Nobody was talking about him this time a year ago. And I think that's the case of Trey Lance. But if I hear it correctly, I'm hearing David Turner saying Trey Lance is not a first-round pick.
No, and I would even have had my skeptibilities about Burrow last year, okay? Because Burrow wasn't starting at Ohio State, right? And then he goes down to LSU, and he has a pretty much pro team around him. So he's got, just great assets and stuff. I really would have had to sat down with the kid, find out his makeup, and really understood him before I would have drafted him number 1 overall. Now, that's me. That's my philosophy. Other people have different philosophies.
I had that same concern. And he did have 2 years of starting experience, but just one that was,
really productive.
And then lights out season, right? So
and again, I learned my lesson when we drafted Jamarcus Russell. Like Jamarcus Russell, he had a couple years of starting, but he only had 2 300-yard games. Most of what he won was running the ball and LSU, short passing game. Those guys turning the ball upfield and running after the catch. And Mr. Davis wanted to bring him into our system, which is a vertical system where it depended a lot on the arm talent of a quarterback versus just jumping the ball and letting them run after the catch. I was like, I didn't see the marriage here. Well, it wasn't a good marriage, but again, my vote didn't count. So it was just like, you got to really digest. And if you want to know more about quarterbacks, come to Friday Night Scout School because we're breaking them down tomorrow night. And, we're going to be taking Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, and your guy, Kyler Murray. And we're going to be breaking them down and showing, like, how they're working it towards being successful, what they did in college. We could see why they're being successful here in the pro level. So, again, to me, I have tomorrow night I can get more in depth in it. If you come into Friday Night Scout School, you'll hear me get really in depth into my quarterback philosophy.
It's going to be a treat. I hopped on a call with you and Ryan on Tuesday. Like I said on Twitter, I got a sneak peek preview. It's going to be fun. It's going to be educational. And, David and Ryan will break down that transition of the college player to pro player, the characteristics and traits, how to break down a quarterback. And we'll do it with some of the elite quarterbacks. And I said elite with Kyler Murray because I feel bad for the Jets this weekend. I really do. With Joe Flacco starting, I just feel bad for them at this point. The smackdown the Cardinals are going to put on them. But we're going to shift gears into the NFL draft, talk some running backs before we do. Any final thoughts there on Trey Lance, John?
Yeah, I think this is exactly what you said. In this scenario, it'd be interesting to see if this had played out in a normal situation, right? If you had a full this whole season, to play, and if it married, what you saw last year, there might be a different conversation. But at the end of the day, with everything going on, if the NFL draft is still taking place and it looks like the NFL's playing, the safest route is to do what he did. There was not going to be a benefit of playing in the spring. It didn't look like he wanted to return and wait another year, and who can blame a kid at that age, for doing that? And when you're probably hearing very, very different things from the who's who behind the scenes that are recruiting you, you take your shot and, see what happens. And as we mentioned yesterday, at least the good thing at Haskins' situation is at 23, at least they just came right out and told you, where they are with you and what they think. Now it's a combination of Haskins' responsibility to use that as motivation to go work on the things he needs to work on, and what team decides to go out there and look at him the way the Saints looked at Winston last offseason to say, hey, we'd like to get a hands on that and just see what we could do with it in our system and our people for a year. And like I said, you're hearing a very different group of answers out of Jameis Winston in New Orleans than you heard in Tampa, right? We mentioned it last week, listen to the answers and the responses and the way that Cam Newton is saying things the last 2 or 3 years in Carolina versus the last 2 or 3 weeks in New England. It's not out of the realm of, possibility that Dwayne Haskins going to the right situation and program, finding himself somebody that he trusts to coach him harder, to really be honest with him about what he needs to work on, and on his own side to mature a little bit and not think everybody in the world is kind of coming after him, when they're critiquing his game. There's still a shot for Haskins to kind of flip the switch here down the road, because if he sat for 2 years, he's still 25.
Yeah, and listen, you don't have to look no further than Rich Gannon. People develop at all times of their career, right? So we are going to shift gears now to the NFL draft. We are the NFLDraftBible.com. Make sure you log on, get the virtual draft guide now, go all access, and you will also receive a free copy of our good friend Neil Stratton's book, Scout Speak, if you're into the football industry, if you want to learn more about behind the scenes, if you want to understand more about life on the road and tales from the scouting trails and how the whole scouting process works. Well, hey, Scout Speak is a great book, so you can get a free copy when you go all access at the NFLDraftBible.com, and you'll unlock the magic. Over 300 scouting reports already here in October. I can't even imagine how many we'll have by the time we get to April. And shout out to Ryan Roberts and Dakota Follett doing a great job behind the scenes as always. Well, Ryan is on the front line with the Friday Night Scout School and Brian Baldinger breakdowns. But again, make sure you log on, sign up for Friday Night Scout School there. We're also giving away books every Friday night at Scout School. We run a little trivia, so you can win a book there if you sign up for Friday Night Scout School. And right now, the NFL Draft Bible Big Board, when we dive into the running backs, we went through our quarterback big board last week. We're going to take a deep dive. Nobody goes deeper, baby. Into the running back. And Travis Etienne is our number one running back right now. Najee Harris from Alabama. These are seniors only now. Kylan Hill, Mississippi State. Number 3, Trey Sermon, who has yet to play, sitting at number 4 on our big board. Of course, the transfer from Oklahoma. He'll now play at Ohio State. What a backfield with him and Justin Fields. And then my guy, little biased, Khalil Herbert, Virginia Tech, transfer from Kansas. We saw what he did this past week. I think Jim Nagy might have been listening to the show, because I see now he's on the updated Senior Bowl watch list. Khalil, if you're watching, we still want you over at the NFL PA Bowl, brother. But just taking a look at the seniors here, do you have anything different on your personal board? Any guys kind of rising and escalating or sliding, in your opinion?
Which way are we going first? You hitting me first?
I did. I hit you, John.
Yeah. See that now. The thing I like with Etienne is, I think he's a very productive college back, which a lot of these guys I think are going to fit into this mold this year. But I'm not sure if that's my guy in terms of full-on NFL between the tackles and pounding it out. I'm not sure that I think that's where his game goes at the NFL level. He's able to do and hit the corner on a lot of people, at that level. And a lot of times, a lot of that production is coming against suspects. Now, he's equally as productive when he plays against better teams and better defenses. That legitimizes what he is at the college level. Am I set to say that without a rotation and without whoever the other guy would be, that flat is, my guy, I want him. He's a first round pick, and my running back position is solved. Just him by himself. I'm not sure I'm going there, but I do think that this senior group is solid to at least 6 or 8, 6, 8 plus guys with a lot of variables between them. And then the good news is there are some interesting home run hitters that could try to enter if they decided to. The kid from Memphis has already said he's doing that, Kenny Gainwell. And you look at the combination of what he brings to the table as a runner, 50 catches out of the backfield. He will be very suited, for the NFL game. And then I think, you're really keeping your eye on Xavier White, at Georgia, and Jonta Brown there at Penn State. I probably jacked up his first name with the pronunciation of it. But, those are 2 other guys that you'd be kind of keeping an eye on as underclassmen that could jump in. The Trey Sermon one is very interesting because he does have more of that body type to handle the between the tackles type punishment. And it'll be interesting to see the dynamic between what does he run, probably closer to 4.5, and what is Etienne's timed speed, at the end of the day. It's just, to me, I see a lot of what Etienne can do at the college level, and I'm not quite sure you can always get away with bouncing that out, at the NFL level the way that you are in college.
Yeah, you mentioned some of those underclassmen. Before I go over to David Turner, who's chomping at the bit to defend his guy Travis Etienne. Cuba Hubbard coming into the season, Oklahoma State. I think he's kind of seen his draft stock slide into that day 3 range. Keontae Ingram, the junior out of Texas, very highly rated coming into the year. Not having an outstanding season, but Kenneth Gainwell also, who you mentioned, one of those opt-outs, a redshirt sophomore. Shout out to him and his family. I know they lost 3 people in his family due to the COVID, which is why he opted out of the season. Journey Brown of Penn State, this guy might be the best of the bunch. I had a chance to see him. He's another Penn State running back superstar waiting to happen. And then, the one sleeper, dark horse, I know he might not even get a look until day 3 because of the size aspect. And Jarrett Patterson, I know Buffalo's not playing right now, but he's a guy that from his first game just caught my attention, continues to catch my attention. So those are some of the underclassmen there. But Travis Etienne, like I said, David, still sitting atop our big board. John disagrees. I saw you shaking your head. State your case, my man.
No, Etienne to me is a great back. I mean, and again, you don't have one back anymore. This isn't like the old days where we see, you find value in backs late in the draft. I mean, we've seen all these guys that are undrafted backs, late round draft picks that are making contributions to NFL rosters all over the place. It's not like you have to take a pick in the top 5 and have a back. You have the best rotations right now, or the best back or rotation running game. So when you look at it, I think Etienne is going to be a first-round pick at some point, maybe a late or early second-round pick, because of what he can do and bring to a running game for the right team. I think he's a threat outside the backfield as a pass catcher. I think he makes people miss in the field. He's elusive. I think this is a guy that's really, like I said before the season, who was my Heisman pick? It was Etienne, because I thought Etienne was gonna, Trevor Lawrence was gonna, get everybody loosened up, and then Etienne was gonna have a heck of a year, and he's already having a heck of a year. So, that was my pick early, and I'm gonna stay on that train because I really like what this kid brings to the table, not only at the college level, like I hear what John's saying, but I think at the pro level, he brings a dynamic that a lot of pro offensive coordinators are looking for. On the show the other night, we talked about how the NFL has gone to more of a spread concept. You got a lot of more 11 personnel, even 12 personnel, but with the tight end standing up and away to open up run holes for these kind of backs inside the tackles. It's not like it's an old school 21 personnel style, Bears 46 defense. You got to have a big back to bang it up inside these days. A lot of times, 3rd and 1 is still a passing down in the NFL these days. So it's like, you got these backs that I think can be a little smaller, maybe faster, and more outside runners that make it now in the NFL because of what the offensive coordinator styles are adapting to, what the offensive styles are starting to look like they're evolving to.
Yeah, I mean, he's been gashing defenses not only on the ground, but also as a pass catcher, very capable out of the backfield. And I think for his career, he's averaging almost like 8 yards a clip per carry, which is pretty incredible. I mean, it's just a testament to his burst, his speed, his breakaway ability. A couple guys here. We talked about Spencer Brown a couple weeks ago, UAB, who, oh, by the way, I think he's second in the nation behind Travis Etienne, or maybe even first. Here's a guy who battled injuries throughout his career, dropped about 15, 20 pounds in the offseason, comes in leaner, meaner, quicker, still with the capability to pound the rock between the tackles. But that's a guy I'm keeping an eye on. We mentioned, Damian Harris gets activated this past week, another 100-yard rusher for the Patriots. I mean, personally, I like Najee Harris as a better prospect. And, to me, I think Najee Harris is going to be a dependable Nothing fancy, nothing flashy there. Just a dependable, again, between the tackles type of runner. And I'm not sure I'm ready to put any of these guys in the first round just yet. Etienne is definitely in my top 50. I just don't know if I can risk the first round pick. One other guy, though, Breece Hall, Iowa State running back. Keep an eye on that guy as he continues to kind of skyrocket up draft boards. But going back to my first round argument and David's point that you see so many late round guys or undrafted guys making an impact. Dearness Johnson at a USF the other day comes out of off the street and has a hell of a game. But I was curious. I was curious just how factual that late round backs can thrive and survive. So I went back, I looked at the NFL rushing leaders, and I was curious to see where exactly were they selected in the draft. And at the end of the day, fellas, believe it or not, the most dominant runners, or the guys who lead the league in rushing, or the few guys that do tote the rock and carry the grunt of the work, the majority are all still first and second round picks. I hate to break it to you. So let's just take a look at them. Dalvin Cook is leading the league in rushing. He was the 41st overall pick in the second round. Aaron Jones, here's one of the exceptions to the rule. 182nd overall, fifth round pick. You can argue maybe the best running back in the league, right? Nick Chubb, second round pick, 35th overall. Derrick Henry, the 45th selection overall. Joe Mixon, the 48th selection overall. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, another first round guy, 32nd. Josh Jacobs, 24th overall. And then you get your first undrafted guy, of course, Illinois State, James Robinson, there amongst the league leaders. Now, it does say that you still can find guys like Austin Eckler, Chris Carson, James Conner. Those are some of the other notable guys in the rushing leaders that weren't exactly high draft picks or even some of them undrafted guys. Austin Eckler, we talked about it. If it wasn't for the preseason last year, he's probably not even in the league. So I don't know. I mean, you can have a lot of success late in the round or even with an undrafted guy, but it looks like, John, if you want a bulldozer, you still got to take a high pick on these guys.
Yeah, I'll give you one that he has to opt in. Well, first off, the Pac-10 has to play, which, knock on wood, they'll start eventually here. But that kid, Max Borghi at Washington State, if that kid you get him to the combine, and there's going to start being those unnecessary comparisons to, Christian McCaffrey, but he fits the NFL game. He's a little shorter than ideal, but he's a muscled up kid who can run probably 4.4 or faster, line up at different spots, catch really well. He'd be a real interesting, kid to see if they play and he were to opt into this class. I think he's a guy whose, name starts moving pretty quickly because of how teams would see him fitting into a role immediately and what you could do with him. Because he definitely has some go-go speed to him. He's a guy that'll be worth watching once the Pac-12 kicks off.
Yeah, 5'9", $195 out of Washington State, expected to time in that 4.4 range. He is definitely one of the players, if you subscribe to the virtual NFL Draft Bible, one of the many running backs we have on file. Final thoughts on the running back position, David, as we kind of close things out on our draft talk.
Well, I think when you look at this draft class, I don't see like LaDainian Tomlinson or a clear-cut, dominant back, right? You don't see a Gurley or a Gordon or something that you're just going to go and get enamored with. I really think you're going to find guys, at least in the NFL right now, the offensive line play is so terrible. You're going to see some offensive linemen go a lot higher than maybe they should to just try to sew up some leaky gaps. And these guys get pushed back. It can look more like the 2015 draft, I think, where Giovanni Bernard was the first one off the board in the second round. And that's what I see for this draft class. Even though there's some really good runners and some good players, I think you're going to see them back into the first round, into the second round. That's how I'm judging this draft class right now. But the Najee Harris kid at Alabama, like he's a legit guy. I don't think we talked a lot about him because I got on my NTN kick. But I think he's a really good, solid back too. And John brought up the kid from Washington State or so. I mean, there's some good backs out there. I just don't see them in the elite category this year, this draft class. And again, running backs, they have to be dual threats these days for these offensive coordinators in the NFL. You're just not seeing most teams go into the Titan style offense anymore where they're going to run the ball downhill. You're seeing more and more of the 11, 12 personnel. So, I love running backs. I think they're great. I think it's a lost art. I think, more backs should be in the downhill flat back running style. But we'll get into that in a couple of weeks when we evaluate on Friday Night Scout School the running back position.
Yeah, no doubt. And I agree with you. Like when I look at the guys that went the first round, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Josh Jacobs, I just don't know if I have Etienne in that category yet. Doesn't mean he can't play his way into that mix. Right. But as if the draft were held tomorrow, I don't know if I can stand on the table. I mean, I'm a hard guy to take a running back.
Yeah, but that's why I've been doing this 18 years, and I can see that. I had to throw.
You need a stronger prescription. You need a stronger prescription, my friend. Updates. Here we go. The super producer Samantha. They say the new COVID laws. Bills will not be paid a game check under the revised COVID-19 terms. It's a hot button topic. Players are discussing among each other. Roster sizes, game day activities, IR modifications, and COVID-19 designations were among conditions put into place to avoid this scenario. That was from Chris Mortensen. I'm told by Titans and Bills players they were told there is an option of playing their Sunday game on Monday or Tuesday in Nashville. If that happens, Thursday night's game between the Chiefs at Bills would be moved to Saturday. This is all just the beginning of being discussed. Diana Rossini and then Judy Bautista said as of yesterday, a forfeit was not even discussed, but something that is being discussed. If a team is forfeited and does not play, does CBS get their refund on the television deal? That's a whole nother.
Look at the ripples. Look at the ripples.
So there you go. The latest and the greatest here on the COVID-19 front. We'll be back at it again tomorrow, Friday, 9 a.m. Eastern. Big Law will be joining us. Lawrence Johnson from Seven Cities Shop Talk. I'm sure John will have some more breaking news to discuss here. And David Turner, if we don't see you tomorrow, please, again, tell everybody at home about the Mav Sports Podcast, a great panel this past week, in addition to Friday Night Scout School.
I appreciate it. Yeah, we had a women's panel this week on Mav Sports Take. And if you haven't heard them, you need to download. I mean, we had leaders of their industry from all different angles. Jill McBride Baxter, who's an agent, been in the business since 1987, was on. We had Grace DeWitt, who's a social media marketing gal who worked with the Pelicans, the Saints, and a lot of players. And she works very intimately with the sporting industry. And then Jennifer Lee Chan out in the Bay Area. She's an NFL insider for the Niners. She came on, talked about her rise to glory in sports. And then, we can't forget we had Catherine Rach from the Philadelphia Eagles on as well, who's in the coordinator in the scouting department. And they all were able to sit and talk about their rise, their journey, their advice for women trying to come up in sports these days. They talked about the pandemic and how it's affecting each one of their jobs and how they're able to do their jobs. So it was really a great conversation. It was about 40 minutes, and we were able to get everybody on and really hear some good sports talk, and that's what we're trying to do is bring different angles, different stories to the market at Mav Sports Take. So we're really proud of this episode. We think it's the best one yet. It's episode 9, and we're doing groundbreaking stuff. So, it's really amazing, and I hope people do take the opportunity to go download it where they can find Mav Sports Take anywhere. And tomorrow night, quarterbacks, Friday Night Scout School. We're excited about it. We went through the passing schemes. Now we're going to put it to the test, show how these quarterbacks take their success from college into the pro level.
And I think we might be seeing a lot of vertical schemes there on Friday Night Scout School, thanks to our guy Ryan Roberts. And that's going to do it. I'm being told we got to wrap things up. So, John, keep it rolling. Okay. Live. The state of football live here. We can do that, John. What do you got going on for tomorrow, my man?
Well, okay. Good to see that if we didn't know who was in charge, we do now know who indeed is in charge. So good luck with that the rest of the day. The only person who had a worse afternoon or evening in that scenario was the poor tennis player's boyfriend who got kicked out of his chair because she said that he was disturbing her during her match yesterday at the French Open. I'm sure his friends were loving the factor that their boy was getting ridiculed on SportsCenter. So kudos to SportsCenter for ruining that relationship. There's no coming back from getting embarrassed on SportsCenter if you're a dude sitting in the stand watching your girl play tennis and she kicks you out of your seat. There's pretty much no coming back from that. Otherwise, I mean, hey, you know where we're at. Right now down here, the LSU game has been moved to Missouri. They still are planning on playing the Saints game at home on Monday night. But when you are watching that game on Monday night, regardless of if it's in the Superdome or if you're watching it being played in Indianapolis, everyone else have a real understanding that there will be a very large group of people, likely between Texas and Alabama, that are now without power again for several days, if not weeks. And the unfortunate thing is that this storm is tracking more and more like it's going to go right up the same alley that the last one did, which means all the work and all the cleanup and all the progress that has been made in the past, 2 to 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks, I think it is, since the last storm, are probably going to be revisited immediately by this. So, down here, I mentioned it before, anytime a storm comes your way, you don't be thankful that it's not coming right in my backyard. Your thoughts and prayers go to the people where it's going to, because we're talking about a storm that hasn't hit yet, and they will be for sure dealing with it in real time Monday Night Football. So when you're watching it at home, take a minute, take a break, go online. If you're going to order pizza and wings and spend $50, go online and drop $5 or $10, to whichever foundation or charity you want to, because, speaking firsthand, these people will be dealing with this for a long period of time once it's all said and done.
Well, we appreciate that sobering reminder and update. I'm so caught up in the bubble, literally between the football bubble, the Yankee bubble. I'm so oblivious to some of these things. Sometimes I knew it was coming, but I didn't realize the impact. So
I like the fact that you get Yankee bubble and NFL bubble. I've gone from quarantine bubble to Stormfront bubble. At this point, I'll take Yankee angst bubble. Is right there on the side there. So I'll take that.
I'm in daddy mode, so I'm just in straight bubbles. We're just going outside and blowing bubbles.
Yeah. Well, there you got it. For a closeout, I can't top that. So we'll be back again tomorrow at 9 a.m. Special thank you for David Turner joining us here each and every week like he always does. Make sure you check out MaverickSportsConsulting.com. Of course, John Murphy and his role with the Toronto Argonauts down there in New Orleans, Louisiana, and our super producer, Samantha, keeping it rolling on the tracks here as we get along. Rick Serritella will catch you, everybody.